Are the Bengals finally ready to make the push for that Super Bowl win? What is going on, guys? It's Alex coming back at you with another video. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the 2023 Cincinnati Bengals, going and breaking down their starting roster as well as predicting their record. So if you guys are new, would love for you guys to stick around. I made a promise that I'm going to post a video every single day this month. So we're pretty much on track for that. And it's a little bit insane because it's the off season, but so far, we've done a pretty damn good job. Missed one day, but I'm going to get you guys back with a double upload coming soon. Let's get right into the video. Starting off with the offense. Yes, let me know how you guys think of the layout so far. So good. It's honestly something that's not impossible to replicate, and it's pretty fun to do. So if you guys do enjoy it, again, feedback, always critical. These videos don't really get very many views, but I like doing it anyways because it teaches me about the rosters, but it also informs you guys in a very quick manner that, if you want to go for the 1.5 hour session, Marcus Whitman's the type of guy for that franchise guy. But I also have had permission for the title, so don't worry, I'm not being a copycat asshole like a lot of people are in this industry. At least I have permission to be a copycat asshole. But let's get right into this. If you guys know me, I like to go skilled positions to line back to skilled positions for offense to defense. So discussing the quarterback, Joe Burrow, he's awesome. He's a great player. I remember that he was my number 2 player in the class when he came out. Chase Young was number 1, but when Washington Commanders video comes up, which AFC or NFC East is going to be next, hint, hint. So definitely stay tuned for that. Very excited for it. I'll discuss a little bit more in depth about it, but pretty much the best abilities, availability. Joe hasn't even been fully available, but he has been much more in recent years, which is awesome because he has proven to be just as good as he was there at LSU. Able to command an offense. He's definitely somebody when he gets on fire, you are not going to stop him for the rest of the season. He's a very, very talented guy. Maybe I'd wish his mobility were a little bit better, maybe a little bit more trust in that knee if he is running downfield, but that's a nitpick at best. And I think his biggest concern is going to be when he gets into the negative rhythm. We saw at the start of last year against my Steelers, just throwing interception after interception. You do become a detriment to your team when you do stuff like that. But he only does that for a game or two, and then he'll play the other, 15 at an extremely high elite level. He is easily a top 10 to top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So, great for you guys. Not as a Steelers fan, but, as someone who's a fan of the NFL, it's good to be able to see prospects that you like end up panning out. Running back Joe Mixon, I think he's going to be my guy to bounce back this year. A lot of people were saying, well, obviously Bijan wasn't remotely close, but if there were a running back talent there worth a first-round grade at, I believe you guys were 28th, then you guys would have been an excellent candidate to be able to take one. So I think that since it's up, like the contract and, the replacement idea is pressing pretty high, I think that he's going to have a good bounce back year. And then you also have a pretty damn solid offensive line. I think the right tackle, Jonah Williams, he didn't really prove himself fully at left. Don't really know if I'm going to trust him at right, so that's why I have that as one of my worst positions there. We'll discuss the line a little bit more in a minute, but I think overall your team's looking really good. Receivers are the strength. You got Jamar Chase, who's obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, along with Tyler Boyd, who's a beast. He's been super consistent, always under the radar. He's somebody that I would love to have on my team. A little bit annoying to see him go against my Steelers, especially this year when we don't have, who I'll talk about soon, Mike Hilton or eventually Cam Sutton. We have Chandon Sullivan now going up against Tyler Boyd. I feel like it's going to be a significant drop-off, but also T. Higgins. A lot of rumors about him being traded. They've been pretty much silenced by the fact that y'all want to keep him longer term. So intriguing to see how the cap's going to eventually work out here. You're going to put a lot of money into skilled positions over time versus putting it into more of the offensive line side. I'm very intrigued to see how that works out. But speaking of the offensive line, you got Orlando Brown Jr., the offseason signing, switching back to left tackle. He's a very talented player. I don't know how he's going to do. I thought he was coming in to be the right tackle. I'm a little bit surprised that they kind of switched Jonah and him. And I think that was because Orlando was like, I want to play left. And I think he can. He's a very good tackle. I probably, that was, I believe, one of the first years they started looking at the draft. I'm slipping up my memory right now into which year it was. It might have been 2019 or 2020, but I think it was 2019. regardless, Orlando Brown, he had an awful combine. It looked like he had a bad motor, and you know that would have put me down a bit on him because I think that motor is one of the biggest telltale signs of whether a player is going to make it or not. Because NFL stands for not for long, and you kind of have to have that mentality or at least elite talent to remain relevant. And he's done that, which is great. I love when guys defy the odds. So Cordell Volson's been pretty damn consistent. I personally think that the interior of the offensive line is good, not great. Ted Karras, super duper solid. He's a very, very talented center. But, Alex Kappa as well. You guys brought those guys on, I believe, last year in free agency. You guys wanted to put some good money into that interior, and I'm all for upgrading the interior of the offensive line because y'all definitely needed it. And then, talked about Jonah at right tackle. A lot of people were talking about him as a trade candidate, but teams just didn't want to pay the price. Tight end, which is what I always forget, Irv Smith Jr. I always forget to bring him up until after the offensive line. But Irv, that's the biggest weakness by far. So, simply put, he's never really excelled as a tight end in the NFL as a starter. And there's a reason why a team sent a second-round pick, the one that he was on, to be able to take a big upgrade from him. And that's because they believe that tight end's a huge value position. Personally, I think that losing Hayden Hurst was a big ding because Hayden Hurst had a pretty good role in this offense last year. So I'm very excited to see if Irv Smith can really take that step up. He's also a candidate for most improved if he ends up being relevant that way. But I'm questioning it. I really don't understand. And there were some good tight ends down the board. I'm forgetting the one that the Jets brought on, who I was a big fan of out of, I believe, ODU. He was like a physical freak, Zach Kuntz. Physical freak, great size, and something that would have fit really well into that role. Could have gotten him in the 6th round, right? And they decided not to do that, which, it is what it is. But some notable backups in there. I love the fact that, replacement on the mind of Joe Mixon. You have Chase Brown, who I was a big fan of, as, a 3rd to 4th round guy. And y'all picked him up in that, I believe, that later range, if not in the 5th round. So great for that because he's an athletic beast, and I think he's going to be a very good fit here. But then you also have some good offensive linemen there. Lyle Collins was that big acquisition a year or so ago. Didn't end up panning out, but as a backup, I think that's excellent. It makes sure that Jonah Williams can remain at at least playable or startable level, or otherwise, you're getting benched. And then you also have Jackson Carman, who was able to step in and have some good reps there. Overall, B+. You have a great quarterback. You have a very talented running back who needs to bounce back, and you have a great receiving core. But I think there's some fundamental flaws. And I'm being, again, optimistic here because of the fact I think Joe Mixon's going to bounce back. Without a good running game, without an elite offensive line, without an elite tight end, I don't know if I could fully trust being fully reliant on wide receivers. So I am a little bit worried about that. But B+ is an amazing grade because y'all know I'm a tough cookie. This grade is also a B+ for the defense. I'm being very optimistic here, but I'll get into that in just a second. Starting out with the defensive line, starting out with Sam Hubbard. He's awesome. Ohio State guy, good value down the board. He's ended up being a very consistent starter for you. DJ Reader, BJ Hill, those guys also really good acquisitions. I love the fact that you guys kept BJ Hill. It was definitely something where you were losing 2 of your starter defensive interiors, and you decided to keep one, which I'm very happy to see that BJ Hill was the guy you kept because he has super high upside and he's been a super talented dude. Trey Hendrickson, big money acquisition from the Saints a year or so ago. I think it might have been 2 years. He's been a really good impact, and he's exactly what you probably wanted out of Trey. So very happy for that. Miles Murphy is another guy who will definitely find a way into that rotation. My number 4 player in the past draft and your first round selection. Amazing dude. Honestly, I think that the fact that he doesn't need to start right away is going to totally hone in his skills, and it's honestly a little bit irritating as a Steelers fan because he's a really, really good player. Looking at the linebacker situation, you have Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt as the 2 primary dudes. I think Jermaine Pratt is solid, nothing special. I think he's the weakest link on the team. But you have Logan Wilson, who's one of the strengths, and I love that about him. I think you guys are going to be signing him to a longer-term deal, if I'm not mistaken. It's early in the morning. It is what it is. But Logan Wilson's a very talented guy. I liked him coming out of Montana. He was one of the few guys I did like. Well, Mainly the reason I ended up really liking him before I actually saw him play was because he was really good at Madden. And a lot of these guys who I have affinity for who ended up panning out before I ever studied the draft or anything like that, I would start playing the game and these guys would actually kick my ass. I'm like, the hell, man. But Logan Wilson's proven to definitely back up the hype there. Daxton Hill moving to pure free safety. Nick Scott, or actually I think it's strong safety. Nick Scott's free safety. It's my bad for not adjusting the graphics there. But Dax, he's going to have a bigger role this year. So I think he's going to be able to really flash out, because losing out on your 2 starting safeties it's a pretty big ding, especially when one of them is Jesse Bates. I think Jesse Bates is a really good player. And I don't think Daxton Hill is a bad player at all. I gave him a first-round grade, but we'll see what happens there. Nick Scott was a nice acquisition from the Rams. Slot corner Mike Hilton, obviously a Steelers fan, that hurt to see him go, and he is still playing at a very, very high level. Cam Taylor-Britt, second-round selection from a year ago, not this past year, but the year before. I think he's a really talented guy. I don't know if I would really want him to be starting on my team just yet, but he is certainly a good player. Senior Bowl standout. He was one of those guys who I really liked after the Senior Bowl. Then at right cornerback, Chidobe Awuzie. Cheeto is a beast, but again, I don't really trust that these corners are purely starter quality. They're just fringe starters rather than, bona fide starters. We're going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys soon, and, you got Trevon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore. You put that up against Cheeto and Cam Taylor-Britt, I start getting a little bit worried. But, another guy to bring up in that corner core, DJ Turner, second-round pick, I believe, from this past year. And I think he's going to be probably playing more of a Dax Hill role in the long run. This is all based off of Our Lads depth chart, guys, by the way. I forgot to mention that before. So don't get mad at me if, say, oh, well, Jermaine Pratt's not going to be the starting will, which he will be. But, no pun intended. But, that's just an example I pulled out of my ass. But you never know. Dax Hill might end up being a free safety, or DJ Turner might end up being, a slot cornerback / nickelback for you guys. There's always going to be that possibility because we don't know the actual depth chart, but I'm just following the one off of Our Lads. But other backups, obviously talked about Myles Murphy already. Zach Carter, I think that he's somebody with unbelievable potential. Just never really trusted him on the defensive interior, which that's where he's playing. But I think that he could, if he ends up doing it right, end up being a really fun rotational pass rushing defensive interior. And then Joseph Asai obviously ended off the year last year doing something a little bit foolish, but he was an absolutely awesome big asset during that game until that period of time. So overall, defense is a very solid unit. I don't really see too many weak links. Again, Jermaine Pratt, who's still solid, who I liked out of NC State, is the weak link. And then you could say Dax Hill if he ends up not panning out. But I think that overall you don't have tomato cans. And that's a really good place to be because even teams like my Steelers, our linebacking core, there's some tomato cans in there. So let's get next into the schedule. Yes, I did end up hand piecing this together. It is a pain in the ass, so show some love. But y'all already see it already. So I'll break it down for you guys. Week 1's at Cleveland. All of this is, retrospective, so I'm not going to really change games unless I see something drastic. Like let's just say for Carolina, I think there was a game recently that I graded for Carolina, and I think it was for the NFC East. But, let's just say I see their roster. I'm like, wow, honestly, I believe in them a lot more. Basically, that's what I did with the San Francisco 49ers, by the way. So check out that one pretty soon. But the Niners, for example, if I end up looking at their roster and being like, wow, I think that this team is way better than I represented them in previous videos, it is subject to change. So this is based on an initial reaction. But so far, including the San Francisco 49ers, it's been pretty spot on. Like, I don't think that I'm a dumbass when it comes to rosters. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, but sometimes there is that guy that you didn't really think about and that chemistry that you didn't think about that when you start realizing it, you're like, damn, I didn't really think about this offensive line being so good. And so just keep that in mind. But I don't really think there's going to be much that changes my idea of the schedule or of the records predictions for the AFC North, because I do know the rosters really well, and I think these teams are all extremely strong. So, for clarification, the Browns and Steelers both have a 10-7 record. I think this division is going to be elite. But you start out beating Cleveland Browns. I think Deshaun has some rust on him, and I don't really think I need to explain much further than that. Without Kareem Hunt, I'm not really too worried about the attrition setting in. So I think the Browns do have a little bit of an Achilles heel in terms of that. Baltimore, I'm saying that y'all are going to win because I'm having you split based on who's home. I also think that this team could be a little bit more ready since Lamar is coming off, not playing the entire year, could have a little bit of rust himself. Los Angeles Rams, I just have no faith in. I don't think I did last year either. Maybe I did last year. I think I did last year, but I don't have much faith in the Rams. I don't like teams that don't fully develop the offensive line, but that's honestly a team that I could end up switching my opinion on because I know they have invested very well in the draft with a lot of players. We'll see. Tennessee, it's always a game that, you're in Nashville. It's going to be hot as hell. You have Derrick Henry pounding you down. Nope. Pause. But regardless, I think that Tennessee has that, the way Miami Dolphins were able to always beat the Patriots just randomly. I think the Titans kind of have that ability no matter how good they are. It's just one of those teams that can compete. So Tennessee's a good team anyways. They're just not up to par with the rest of the AFC. And it's weird to say that, but it is what it is. Arizona, I don't need to explain that one. Seattle, Seattle's a good team, but you're at home. So if you go to Seattle, I think Seattle's honestly a better away team with Russell Wilson. I remember that statistic, but I don't think they are anymore. I think that they're going to be more dominant at home. And you guys are at home, so I think that's why you guys get to take the dub. San Francisco and Buffalo. So I don't really believe in San Francisco. I actually have Brock Purdy coming back week 10 after their bye. So just keep that in mind. So I think this is going to be Trey Lance. And I personally don't believe in Trey Lance. This is not going to be an episode about him. But bottom line, I don't really like a guy who, after a loss, is at a strip club. Just for me, I think I want to see someone who genuinely feels the loss and wants to be able to correct it before celebrating. I think that if you want to go to a strip club after a dub, be my guest. You do whatever the hell you want with your money and your time, as long as you're doing it to celebrate and, not cover up some form of anxiety or something. Regardless, I think Buffalo is going to be a tough one. I think since you guys are at home, I give you guys the tip of the nod in terms of field advantage. And that's a game that could totally be a toss-up, could be a 12-5 season that way. But we'll see what happens when that comes. Houston, again, it's a team with some really good bones, but not much meat on those bones yet. Baltimore already said split them at home. Steelers, I ended up having you guys sweep them, so we'll just talk about that right now. I think that you guys are just a little bit more polished overall. I think Matt Canada is probably the main reason why I don't believe the Steelers to properly compete, but it certainly could be something you also split because the AFC North is really freaking tough. And this is a team that was able to beat you last year because they caused turnovers really well. But that was when you guys were in your slump at the start of the year. I think that the Steelers are probably not going to be as much in rhythm as you guys are at this point, especially after a loss with Baltimore. And, you guys kind of have some easier wins. I'll discuss them in a second with Indy and Minnesota. So I think that you guys certainly are going to be in a good position there to be able to compete with my team there. Then we got Jacksonville. You're in Tampa, or not Tampa, but you're in Jacksonville, Florida. So it's going to be very tough overall. That field advantage, and then Jacksonville's a pretty solid team overall. I think that's certainly going to cause some concern. Definitely a game that you could flip for a dub. Indianapolis, it's a team that I want to believe in so badly. I just don't fully trust them. I just don't yet. But it's another game that could totally flip if Anthony Richardson hits. Of course, it's in the cold, and AR, coming from Florida, now he's going to be in an indoor stadium. And I'm 90% sure this is an outdoor stadium, based on the picture behind it, which is y'all's stadium. I'm pretty sure it's an outdoor stadium. So you guys definitely have home field advantage during that time. Minnesota coming in, another dome team going to be coming in and playing. I also don't think they're that good. I think that they lost. They're going to be losing significant capital, so to speak, in Adam Thielen as well as Dalvin Cook, most likely. And, it is what it is, but I just don't really trust Minnesota overall. the way a lot of people do. Now, Pittsburgh, again, just talked about that one. I think you guys are going to be too hot for them. Kansas City, you're in Kansas City. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Very excited. And the last week, depending if you guys do have a bye or maybe if the bye's out of reach and you're not going to really change your positioning, you could end up resting starters and losing that to Cleveland, who are trying to push over the Steelers because both of them ended up 10-7. But certainly, I do believe that, you might want to stick it to Cleveland and be able to just, give them the what for. And it is what it is. But based on 2022, you guys were the leaders of the division, third in the AFC, ending off with the 28th draft pick. I think that you guys are going to do worse in the division, so that's spoiling how tomorrow is going to go. But I also think that you're the same spot in the conference because I just think that with Lamar Jackson around, they're a lot more dominant during the regular season. But I also think that y'all are going to make it one game before the Super Bowl. You made a push, didn't fully get there, so also spoils who I think is going to go to the Super Bowl. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Peace.